Three, two, one.
Welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Happy Hour podcast. I am your host, Ricky Valero. On today's episode, we are going to break down, like we do each and every week, we're going to break down the Thursday night preview, give you a little bit of the news and notes, some fantasy football start and sit, my bets of the week, and then we'll end the show with the movie corner. As always, I'm joined by my partner here, Mr. Matthew Fox. How are you today, sir?
You know, I'm doing pretty good. Excited for another week of football. Tonight's game actually might be pretty decent with the undefeated Dolphins and their superstar quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. Your personal favorite? It's the Tennessee Titans and then Tua among your football loves.
Look, you know, you worry about your struggling puttering offense that's luckily 11 or 2-1 right now. Has Hackett set football back 10 years in the offensive side of football in Denver? My first question is obviously just as a Broncos fan, on a scale of 1 to 10, how alarmed are you by this offense?
Well, the first 2 weeks, there were a lot of stupid penalties like delay of game and things like that. That definitely got cleaned up in week 3, and I think they made a hire to help that. I didn't think the play calling was that bad in week 3. There's always going to be plays that you question, but the play calling didn't give Melvin Gordon Kenny Pickett's tiny hands where he puts the ball on the ground every 10 seconds, nor did it compel Jerry Jeudy to drop passes. You know, Russ missed one on a third down where Jeudy was open. That was kind of a bummer, but I like what he's got going with Cortland Sutton. The biggest frustration for me, and it's a frustration for many of these teams in the modern running back era, is you have Javonte Williams out there killing it, carrying people, pounding it down, and they continue to split carries. But I'm not the only team that's kind of struggling with that. I think there were a couple of big plays that were just some narrow misses, and they're starting to get some things together. Russ has been a slow starter. We tend to think about when Peyton Manning came to Denver, all the records and everything. But the first 3 games when Manning came to Denver, they were 1-2. And I remember a Monday Night Football game against Atlanta that they lost where they could not get the offense going in week 3. And I thought this was a colossal mistake. And all of a sudden, Broncos go 13-3 that year. And they put it together. I think I've made this argument for a couple of different teams. New coach, new system, new quarterback, didn't play a lick in the preseason. Is it that shocking that the first 3 games, it's taking them some time to figure things out and get on track? We haven't seen the best out of the Rams these first 3 weeks. We have seen some really erratic offensive schemes from the Packers these first 3 weeks. And those are teams where the coach, the system, and pieces stayed relatively in place. There are a bunch of teams that decided it wasn't important to play at all in the preseason, and we've had some very grim results from that.
Yeah, the Packers are like the Packers of all teams. You lose your best weapon, your number 1 receiver, your best player on your team, and yet you should have really had – and you replace him with rookies. You know what I mean? Like this is really, I mean, Sammy Watkins, but obviously now he's hit the IR, and of course he's got a rapport with Randall Cobb, but Randall Cobb's like 92 years old. You know what I mean? He's not stretching the field by any stretch of the imagination. So getting these guys, reps in live football with Aaron Rodgers was very pivotal, and they just never did it. But with that being said, we're going to drop into some news and notes. Big news out of New England this week. Mac Jones is hurt, and he's out. The ETA right now is not.
Well, Belichick refuses to say he's defending.
Well,
the same way he refuses to name an offensive coordinator.
I mean, Belichick might name Tom Brady at starting quarterback this week just to be, an asshole. You know what I'm saying? But Mac Jones looks to be out this week. I'll tell you what, it couldn't come for a better time for like the Green Bay Packers, who are puttering right now on their side of things. But I'm sorry, but Mac Jones is a lot more scary to play than Brian Hoyer. So I don't have a whole lot of faith.
Bailey Zappi.
Yeah, whoever. Yeah. Well, they did draft him rather high, so I don't know. He might come in there and be the be-all, end-all. But, this offense hasn't been great the first 2 weeks of the season. I don't feel like I don't know what they're doing exactly. Like, I really feel like their strong suit is running the football. And obviously they're getting behind early in some of these games, so you take that running game away. I don't feel like they're doing enough job to set Mac Jones up for success, which has really been something that something they did very well last year, right? You know what I mean? They did that very well last year. Their running game is not terrible this year. I mean, you've got Harris is averaging 4.6, Stevenson's averaging 5 yards a carry, but Mac Jones, he does have the 5 turnovers, which is a little bit worrisome, but he had 3 of those against the Ravens. But the way this team's supposed to be built, they're supposed to be built to be ground and pound, which follows with Mac Jones coming off the play action or something like that. When that's not happening and you get behind fast, Mac Jones is forcing some balls. And then, of course, what happened last week happens. You know what I mean? So I don't think it's all on Mac Jones. I do think that he's making a few boneheaded mistakes. But if you're making Mac Jones throw the ball 30-plus times coming from behind, I think you're bound to get what you get from him, what we did last week. So what are your thoughts on the New England Patriots?
Well, probably almost as worrying or more worrying is if they're missing Jacoby Myers again, because he's probably their steadiest and best wide receiver. But you hit the nail on the head. Joe Judge and Matt Patricia are not the offensive dream team. I saw that meme I sent you last night where Belichick didn't get an offensive coordinator because he knew McDaniels would be back in a few weeks, and maybe there's some truth to that. But I just think their scheme, they think, can overcome everything. Mac Jones is a young, developing player that needs some more. They spent millions upon millions of dollars to get Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, and they are basically not featuring either one of them at all now. Devontae Parker had one good game in 3. Nelson Aguilar had one good game in 3. I don't know what the identity for this offense is in any way, shape, or form. I don't even know if I truly consider them a ground and pound, because they've been a running back group that they like to use 3 to 4 running backs a game. That's not really your traditional ground and pound. Would be you have a feature back and you're driving them into the ground. Would be a Tennessee style. Hey, I have Derrick Henry. Good luck trying to stop him. They, for fantasy, it's not great, but I think with Jones out, I'd be loath to really have to play anyone above a desperation flex.
Yeah, really, it's troubling there. And speaking of trouble, obviously, the bad weather down in the Florida area, which we both obviously hope everybody, gets help, and I hope that, houses are not as bad. I mean, the weather's terrible down there. Just, sending thoughts and prayers to everybody down in the Florida area that's having to deal with this weather. But obviously I don't know if I've missed it or not, but there hasn't been anything official about the Tampa Bay game quite yet. I know there's rumors that it's supposed to be moving to Minnesota, but.
Well, so the NFL has said if it has to move, it will be played in Minneapolis, which will be kind of an interesting situation, semi-neutral site. The NFL also removed its deadline to make a decision. I think they're waiting to assess. If you saw, the hurricane was horrendous when it hit, but it slid a little bit, and really, prayers up for the people of Fort Myers. That looked pretty terrible. I looked at some of the videos. Also, as a film fan, I couldn't help but feel the Sharknado vibes with those videos of the sharks swimming on the streets in Fort Myers. All I needed was a little Ian Ziering on the ground there, and it would have been perfect. But for the game, I think Tampa Bay, the part that made me laugh the most was the way that it got reported that the Buccaneers moved the players and allowed them to take their families with them down to Miami. I'm like, allowed them to take their families? Good luck telling those guys they couldn't take their families. What a choice of a phrase. But they've been down there in Miami practicing. I think the bigger issue for Tampa Bay is getting some health on the wide receiver front. It looks like Godwin has a chance to play. It looks like Julio has a chance to play. Mike Evans back from suspension. All those are going to mean much better things. I think Kansas City comes in a little bit angry and hyped up. We will get to more of my thoughts on that game. That's our Sunday night game. But I think both those teams are going to be fine. A lot of veterans on Tampa Bay. They can make the flex.
I just saw a tweet here from the mayor of Tampa about an hour ago. He says, "We're doing our best to keep the Buccaneers game here Sunday. I assured the NFL that the only disturbance here Sunday is when the Bucs kick ass."
Oh, that sounds like Florida putting the needs of the people above all else.
Yeah. With that being said, we're going to transition.
Did Ron
over.
DeSantis send that text out? Are we sure?
God damn it. Oh, we're moving to Thursday night football. Oh my goodness. We're moving to the game of the other Floridian team that we talked about a little bit earlier, the Dolphins versus the Bengals. The Dolphins head into this game, the big 3-0. And I just want to mention this about week 3. I really feel like that game was more of the Bills lost it versus the Dolphins won. If you watch that game, I personally felt like that. The Bills made several bonehead mistakes, which is something that you get from Allen, right? I love Allen. His progression over the last few years has made me a believer after years of not being a believer. He's really impressed me, but there is times where you're going to see that version of Josh Allen. And sometimes it happens in the most inopportune times. Now, obviously, thankfully, it's week 3 of the season. You're 2-1. You're still looking okay. But with that being said, it is a division loss. But I will say that the Dolphins have been somewhat impressive. But at the same time, the last 2 weeks, they've had a lot of luck on their side. And I'm sorry, luck is – I mean, that comeback against Baltimore should have never happened. I mean, it just –
Baltimore hasn't had a secondary in 3 years.
Exactly. So there's that as well. I just don't know how you blow a 35-7-point lead. I still don't understand that one. But I really
John
feel
Harbaugh was channeling his brother for a half.
I really do feel like Buffalo lost that game. But with that being said, we're going to move on to week 4. They're at Cincinnati, a team that is still trying to find a way not to get their quarterback killed. They did have a season-low 2 sacks last week after back-to-back weeks of 6+, but they did face the Jets. But we're finding a Bengals team that needs a win. They need a win here. I mean, falling to 1-3, understand whatever that division looks like. As crazy as it sounds, the way the division's falling, a Watson return really sets the Browns up for a run.
They're a minute and 44 of bad football away from being 3-0. I think they're going to be 3-1 by the end of the weekend.
Yeah, yes, exactly. You know what I mean? Like it's interesting to see the Browns kind of do what they need to do. Like we talked about, if the Browns play competent football for the first 9 weeks of the season, the Browns could easily win this division because you have a Ravens team can't play defense, right? You know what I mean? They're going to win football games, but you have a Ravens team that might be on the verge of being 2-2 after this weekend, right? So then you have the Pittsburgh Steelers who just can't win footballs, who will lose Sunday. Don't care what anybody says. Spoiler alert. I do think they're going to lose Sunday to the Jets with Zachy Wilson back in town. But with that being said, you have a wide range of things happening that even if the Browns are within 1 or 2 games of whoever's in first place, Watson is a very good football player. So the Bengals can't fall too far behind in these first 9 because they might be left in the pack, you know, in the back half of this schedule. And I talked about this. I talked about the Bengals. I thought they were going to struggle. It's crazy that the amount of money they spent on this offensive line and are still struggling. You know what I mean? That to me is something that's quite alarming. You know, in the big picture of thinking here, I think they need to kind of focus on running the ball a little bit more as well. I know the line sucks, but I don't feel like they're getting Mixon involved as much as they should. He's still getting his carries. He's still getting the ball. Mixon's a little – you just have to be able to run the ball in order to take some pressure off of Joe Burrow. You know what I mean? I feel like you're making Joe Burrow do it all. The Dolphins defense has not been great. You know what I mean? They looked impressive a little bit last week, but like I said, they've given up, you know, quite a few points in the first couple games of the season. Obviously 38 to Baltimore, New England game aside, but Buffalo moved the ball down the football field, which I don't see why the Bengals wouldn't have that same success. But I think Tua is going to play. It's leaning towards he's going to play. I don't know how he's going to play. I don't understand how he got put back in that game. That's one of the craziest things I've ever seen in my life. That's like you're out partying. It's 2 a.m. and your buddy falls over and falls down just drunk. The smartest decision ever is to get back up, send him in an Uber, and go home. But instead, you pack it up and you go to the next bar and you keep drinking. You know what I mean? It's just I don't know what's going on here. Can the Bengals get back on track with back-to-back wins? What do you think, Fox, about tonight's game?
Yeah, so for Miami first, both Tua and Waddle are questionable. Both are expected to play. Honestly, if Tua misses the game, that would be a little more concerning for me for the Miami offense. They have not gotten the running game going. I had talked about my sit being Chase Edmonds last week. I feel like the process was right. He had 7 touches for 27 yards last week. Happened to get 2 1-yard, fell into the end zone touchdowns that made him RB12. But they have not gotten production out of him or Raheem Mostert. That's probably the most surprising thing about the Mike McDaniel system. Teddy Bridgewater's the backup there, so if he comes in, maybe Edmonds is a drop-off target. I would like Jalen Waddle and Mike Gesicki better than Tyreek Hill in a Teddy Bridgewater QB'd offense. I think it would be real bad luck for Miami if Waddle and Tua both miss, because if you had to have one of the receivers miss and the other one play with Teddy Bridgewater, Tyreek Hill wouldn't be my choice because I don't think the skill set is great. They may do some more spectacular plays, like end arounds and things, because Tyreek is incredibly fast. But I think they both play, and that bodes well for Miami. You talked about Miami's defense. Their pass defense has shown some vulnerabilities. They allowed Josh Allen to throw for 300 yards. They allowed Lamar Jackson to do quite a few things. Their rush defense has been incredible. Yeah. They smothered the Patriots running game. They decimated Baltimore's running game outside of Lamar Jackson running for his life. And they did the same to Buffalo. Buffalo could not get any ground game going. They had one good run. It was a 43-yard breakaway from Zach Moss. But outside of that, they couldn't get anything going. And they put a lot of pressure on Josh Allen and on Lamar. Those are things that bode incredibly poorly for Joe Burrow, who's not the runner that either of those two are and has offensive line issues of his own. You talked about the running game. I'm with you. It would help him to get it going. It's not been possible. They are averaging over 19 carries a game. So far, they have given 58 carries to Mixon. He has 163 total yards, 2.8 yards per carry. He is probably the one that has suffered the most from this porous offensive line. That also is running into the strength of that Miami defense. I think what they have to do is try to get some quick passes and make the most of it with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, and Hayden Hurst.
See, that's where you hit the nail on the head, where I was going to say that they're not – like, you have receivers that are able to make plays in space. You know what I mean? I talked last week about something like the Titans. The Titans get the ball to Derrick Henry in space and see what happens. They did that. 5 catches, was just mowing people down. It's damn near impossible to tackle Derrick Henry in space. You know what I mean? Like, once he gets moving, it's hard to – Jamar Chase is the same way. Now, obviously, a much smaller athlete, but his speed – do what the Dolphins are doing with Tua and Tyreek and Waddle. Just get them the ball in their hands. Set up wide receiver screens. But more importantly, get the ball out of Joe's hands. You know what I mean? Get it out of his hands.
And some of that is his decision-making.
Yep, 100% agree with that as well.
Steve Young was on PTI a couple weeks ago talking about having looked at the film of Burrow, and the thing that really stood out to him is Joe Burrow is his own worst enemy behind a porous offensive line, holding the ball too long, trying to make things happen. He's got to, the line needs to get better, but he's also got to get better. We saw a little bit of that last week, but the Jets' defensive front is a lot more imposing than the Jets' defensive front right now.
Totally agree 100%. Totally agree 100%. Now it's time to move to Mr. Matt's Games of the Week.
All right, we have a packed early slate this week, including it kicks off with London calling. That first game of the day, the Vikings at the New Orleans Saints, is in Wembley Stadium. That one's an early start, so be sure to check your lineups on Saturday night. The best of the early window, and there are some good games. I was tempted by Buffalo and the Ravens, but I'm going with the surprising matchup of the week. We would not have thought this in August, but it's the 2-1 Jacksonville Jaguars, the first place Jacksonville Jaguars, against the undefeated Philadelphia Eagles, one of only 2 undefeated teams in the NFL. Both these teams are going good. Both these quarterbacks look good. There's a little bit of a revenge narrative, I guess, if you want to buy into that with Doug Peterson, but the revenge narrative has been an overwhelming flop in 2022, so I'm not buying a lot into that. What I am buying into is that Trevor Lawrence has been averaging has 5 touchdowns, no interceptions, and has at least 72% completion percentage in both of his last 2 games. He has looked really good getting Christian Kirk involved. James Robinson looks like the outlier in recovering from an Achilles injury. He has been fantastic, had a breakaway 50-yard touchdown last week. Jaguars coming off a 38-10 thrashing of the Chargers in Los Angeles. The Eagles have been just as impressive. Jalen Hurts looks like the real deal. He's getting Devonta Smith involved. He's getting A.J. Brown involved. He's getting Goddard involved. He's even getting Miles Sanders involved. Who would have thought if you give Miles Sanders the ball, he actually does something? Way to go, Nick Sirianni. I think this one could end up being the game of the day. I'm hoping it's going to be high scoring and a lot of fun. The late window on Sunday is not very good. There are only 3 games. None of them are particularly exciting. The one I'm going to highlight here, because I picked one of the other ones for my upset special, is the Patriots at the Packers. The Patriots don't have a lot of offense, but they usually have some pretty good defense. The Packers have been struggling to find offensive identity. They won last week in Tampa Bay, but they put up 14 first half points and couldn't make a lot happen after that. The Sunday night game is the Kansas City Chiefs at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We mentioned it's either going to be in Tampa Bay or Minneapolis. We don't know when the decision will be made, but they will probably make that, I would guess, by early Saturday morning so everybody can get into place. I think it's going to be a fun game. You know, the Chiefs are coming off of a surprising loss to the Colts. The Buccaneers came up short and looked old on offense against the Packers last week. I think both of these teams want to do better. It looks like the Buccaneers are getting healthy, could have all 3 of their top receivers back, along with Russell Gage and Leonard Fournette. I'm hoping for a little more offensive fireworks. And then my upset special, the Raiders are the only 0-3 team in the league, and yet somehow they are favored at home. You know how I feel about Josh McDaniels. If you spend any time listening to me, I am not a fan. The Broncos are 2-1. I know their offense hasn't looked good, but you know what? They might not need offense to return touchdowns for interceptions for touchdowns in Las Vegas. I'm going with the Broncos, who are surprisingly underdogs.
Hey, I was all over the Broncos last week, and you know what? I was right. We'll talk a little bit later about my bets, but it was the underdog special. I like some of the games of the week.
We're going to have our third ever 11-10 finish in the NFL.
Jesus, God, what an awful game. Time to move over to start and sit. If I can find the button. We got a jam in between the start and sit there. All right, folks, we're back with another segment here with our start and sit, where Fox and I talk about our weekly starts and sit. And you know what? I'm going to kick this off because I'm excited about one quarterback that I'm going to mention that I feel like has that QB1 upside for this week. That's going to be absolutely bonkers, absolutely crazy. And I'm going to say it, and I don't really care what anybody says about it. I'm talking about Zach motherfucking Wilson, baby. I'm starting Wilson this week. Look, I'm telling you, there is a lot of guys that I was looking at this thing and I was like, all right, how crazy do I want to get this week? I'm going to get really crazy. I just love Zach Wilson. I like the matchup. I understand they're facing the Steelers and blah, blah, blah. And the Steelers are great on defense. I don't really care. I'm defying all the odds this week, and I'm telling you to put Zach Wilson in the lineup, and he's going to thrive. This offense is going to be even better. You saw what Joe Flacco did with this offense. I think Zach Wilson's at least better than Joe Flacco. I hope. I think. I don't even know anymore. But give me Zach Wilson. Alexander Mattison at the running back position. I know Cook might play, will play, possibly play. I don't really care. Mattison, I think, is going to be in there. I like to see him play. Chris Olave is another one who thrived last week against he playing last week because of the injuries and kind of the banged up between Mike Thomas and Landry. This wide receiving class for 2022 is really returning a lot on their numbers right now. And I like Logan Thomas again. I liked him last week and it's been whatever, but I'm just going to ride I think Logan Thomas is going to be my start every week until he hits, and then I'll move on to somebody else. But what about you, Fox?
Yeah, so for my starts, I'm going with Trevor Lawrence. I mentioned he's been on fire the last two games. He's QB10 on the season. He really seems to have found something with Doug Peterson. I think he's in for another good game. The Atlanta Falcons are not a good team per se, but they are a hell of a fun team to watch, especially if you have fantasy football, rooting interest. I have two players out of the Falcons that I have in my starts this week. The first of them is Cordarrell Patterson. He's my running back start. He is top 10 this year so far. I have him running back 6 in my rankings. I think he is going to eat against the Cleveland Browns. I think that game is actually going to be fun to watch the same way Seattle and Atlanta was fun to watch. Not that that has a huge impact on your football life, but hey, sometimes it's just fun to watch offenses go out there and sling it. My wide receiver start, Devonta Smith. We have seen through 3 weeks that Jeff Okudah is the real deal. Jeff Okudah was the man that held Devonta Smith without a catch in week 1. Since then, Devonta Smith has exploded. He led them in targets last week. He has been in a real groove. He's wide receiver 18 on the season, despite putting up a goose egg in week 1. I am starting that man with confidence. And my tight end start is Kyle Pitts. Rumors of his demise or ineffectiveness or bustiness were greatly exaggerated last week. They made a point to get him involved. And you know who doesn't guard the tight end well? That would be the Cleveland Browns.
It's also incredibly that it surprises me that folks in the fantasy football world write off people after 2 weeks. What? They don't do that. Come on, quit lying, Matt. Come on, man. What about your sits for the week?
So my sit, quarterback, Justin Fields. I liked the potential. I liked the talent when he was coming out, but we just haven't seen it develop into anything. He's only attempted 45 passes and completed 23 in 3 games. That's 15 attempts per game, completing just over 50%, 297 yards, 2 touchdowns, 4 interceptions total. He's also only had 95 yards rushing in 3 games. So you're getting less than 100 yards passing. I'm not sure that changes demonstrably against the Giants, which, can we reflect for a minute? The worst matchup of 2-1 teams in the history of time is this Chicago Bears against this New York Giants. But I'm just staying away from Justin Fields. He's QB 30 on the season, or he's QB 30 on the season. So he's barely, not really a consideration. Superflex, definitely not a top 12 option. My running back sit is Darrell Henderson Jr. I know a lot has been made of Cam Akers and the goose egg that he put up in week 1, but he has steadily increased his production, and it seems like Sean McVay really wants to get him involved. Henderson, health has been an issue a lot of his career. Health isn't the issue right now, but he's had 47 or fewer rushing yards in each game of the season, hasn't had a reception since week 1. He is only RB 41 on the season. I don't see a reason, based on his volume and production, to make him a reliable play in your lineup. My other wide receiver sit is also from the Rams. It's Allen Robinson. I wanted Robinson to be great. I thought he was a great fit with the Rams. I was excited to see him play with a real quarterback. He's seen 12 targets, catching 7 passes for 88 yards and a touchdown in 3 seasons. He's wide receiver 69 on the season, which is nice. But he has just 1.1 more fantasy points than his teammate Ben Skoranek, the great Ben Skoranek, who is wide receiver 70. For now, Robinson's on my bench. I hope he turns around, but not a reliable play. And my tight end sit, this might be a little bit of a surprise for some, is Dawson Knox of the Buffalo Bills. I like Dawson Knox. I liked what Dawson Knox did in 2021. I was excited to see it continue in 2022. The Bills' offense is red hot, but Knox hasn't been a consistent part of it. He's tight end 24 on the season. He has less than 75 receiving yards total in 3 games. That's not the kind of production I'm looking for. He just hasn't gotten consistent enough volume for me to feel good about rolling him out there.
Yeah, that makes me sad. I've got a lot of Dawson Knox, so it's broken my, especially with the offense, the way they moved this year. I figured that he might slide into that easily, into the maybe that tied for number 2 slot into the offense, and it's just not been non-existent for the most part. With that being said, my sits of the week, I'm going back to Russell Wilson sitting this week. I really agree with you. I think this could be I think that it's going to go one of 2 ways. It's going to be a low-scoring, close game, or the Broncos are going to blow them out because of what their defense is able to do with them. So Russell Wilson might not have to do a lot to this team. My sit for the running back this week is James Robinson. I think that this is going to be a high-scoring game, and the Eagles' defense is good. They've been pretty good there run the ball, but at the same time, I just feel like it's going to be a high-scoring game. We're going to see a lot more ETN out of them. Deontay Johnson's my sit at the wide receiver position. This Steelers team outside of Najee, and Najee hasn't been great, and that's not his fault really. He's another one that I don't understand why he doesn't have 3 or 4 targets a game. It would only make sense to get the best player on your team the ball consistently. I don't think they're setting Mitchell Trubisky up for a lot of success either, which he's not a quarterback that can throw 50 times a game. But if you can't run the ball, you're not going to be able to do anything with Trubisky. So I don't like Deontay Johnson. I don't really like the Steelers at all. And I think that we could finally see, Kenny Pickett. That'd be really cool. I love Kenny Pickett. I don't really love Kenny Pickett. I just want to see Kenny Pickett so that we can see what we can get out of Kenny Pickett. But those are my sets of the week. Tight end, I really don't care because the position sucks. I just want it abolished. I want that to be next after defenses. I think you should just muster up the tight end and put him with the wide receiver position. I don't even know, or flex position. I don't care anymore.
Well, it is really hard to pick starts, I think, at tight end because there's probably only like 5 or 6 guys that you're ever going to feel rock solid about starting every week.
Yeah.
Sits are easier to find because you can find a guy that people trust that maybe you're not feeling. But just about the time I say, Dawson Knox will probably have like 900 yards and 7 touchdowns this week. It'll just be like he'll have a Matt Fox's picture on one glove and flashing the 2 fingers as he goes by.
Absolutely, folks. Let's transition into our final sports segment, our football segment of the show, my bets of the week. If you've been following along all week, you have seen me on Twitter ranting and raving about my glorious 4-0 victory last week. Clean sweep for all of my bets. Fox even doubted some of my picks last week. I remember him saying it. He doubted them, but every single one came to fruition. Why? Because I am brilliant. I'm not really, but you know what I mean? I'm not going to not come on the show and brag about going 4-0. Recap last week. I had the Texans plus 3.5. That fit bought it perfectly well for me. I had the Rams -3. I had the Broncos +3, I think it was. And then, of course, I had the Cowboys as well. So I clean sweep last week. Beautiful, which means only one thing. I'm going to go 0-4 this week, more than likely. But on the season for my picks, 6-3-1. Can't be too mad about that. Week 1, 2-0-1. Week 2, 0-3. Week 3, 4-0. So we're damn determined to go 0-4 this week if it tracks right, folks. But first up, I talked about a little bit earlier. I am on the Jets this week. I got the Jets plus 3.5 at -115 over the Steelers. One tidbit on this one, outside of Zach Wilson coming back, the Steelers who have failed to cover the spread in 9 of their last 10 games. They've been favored. I like the Jets. They've been playing well, and with Wilson back in the fold, I think that he can really get this offense going. My other pick of the week, the Monday Night Football game. I like the Los Angeles Rams Monday night over the 49ers. The 49ers are favored at home. Obviously, they are the home team there. They're minus 1.5 point favorites. I like the Rams +3. I just like the Rams team. I think that they're slowly going to start getting things together. And I really don't think this 49ers team can score points on defense. This has all the signs of being a close, low-scoring game. But, folks, I'm telling you, I think the Rams win this one by double digits. My other game of the week, my other favorite team that Matthew Fox likes to say that is my favorite team, that's the Tennessee Titans. The first two out of the first 3 games of the year, they have won the first half. For some reason, the Colts are heavy favorites in this game as far as halves go. I like the Titans +4 in the first half. These games are always dogfights between these two teams. I like a low-scoring game here as well. And with that being said, I think that it's that low-scoring to give me the Titans +4 at the half. My stone-cold lock of the week, I'm sorry, Mr. Brady, I love you, but give me the Chiefs over the Bucs this week. The biggest reason why I feel like this game is leaning towards the Chiefs for sure winning, obviously, was just the loss to the Colts. That bounce back game this week for the Chiefs, they got something to prove. The team can't go fall down to 2-2. The Bucs, they could go 2-2 and they still could win the division by winning 6 games because that's how bad this division is that they're in right now. But I like the Chiefs. I like what they're doing. They're spreading out the ball. I look at the Colts game as a blip on the radar. There's some miscommunication there. I feel like they got away from what success they had in the first 2 weeks, and they kind of took a step back against the Colts. And I don't think the Colts were as bad as they played in the prior 2 weeks either. I just think that it's going to take them some time to fall into line and form the offense. But give me the Chiefs over the Bucs. So quick recap: Titans +4 first half. The Chiefs money line over the Bucks. Give me the Jets plus 3.5 over the Steelers. Rams plus 3 versus the 49ers. Did I say Jets plus 3.5 over the Steelers? Rams plus 3 over the 49ers. Fox, I'm going to put you on the table here. What do you think of my picks this week?
I think I took the Jets and the points. I still think the Steelers probably win. I just don't feel like they lose 3 games in a row. I'm also not as bullish on Zach Wilson as you. I picked the Rams over the 49ers too. Last week was not my week. I went 5-11 in picks, so that's probably why we were way off on. I called upsets, but I called every wrong upset.
Yeah, that's hilarious to me. Yeah, I feel pretty good about the picks this week, which means it's going to go the complete opposite of what I want it to. You know what I mean? That's just how it typically normally is. I'm feeling really good about some of these. It's been weird seeing some of these lines and being able to get the defending Super Bowl champions at plus 3 at good money is surprising to me. I really do. I'm taking a risk on the Jets.
Because they haven't done well against the 49ers
for sure.
few years, and they haven't looked particularly great, but the 49ers don't look very good either. No,
not at all. And that's the thing that I think that the pass rush has been pretty good for the Rams, regardless of how the rest of the team has kind of looked. And I like the Rams this week. Like I said, I like the Rams by double digits this week. I really do. And for me, it's just the Jets game. I tell you what, if the game moves to Minnesota, I think the Chiefs might beat the Bucs by double digits too. I just think that.
And see, that's when I'm with you about the Chiefs. If the Chiefs were 3-0 and hadn't dropped that odd game to the Colts, I might actually have gone in on Tampa Bay getting the win. Yeah. But the Chiefs rarely lose back-to-backs.
Was that Mahomes' first loss in September?
I don't know.
I thought
it was shocking. Just about the time you give up the NFC South for dead, all 3 of their teams came out and hip checked AFC West teams.
I'll tell you what. I'm crazy for saying this, and I mentioned this yesterday on the podcast, but do not be surprised if the Jaguars beat the Eagles this week. Doug Peterson revenge week. I like the Jaguar. I like the money.
Don't lean into the revenge thing. The revenge thing is 0 for a million this season.
I don't care. I'm going to lean into it. I'm leaning into the revenge factor. I like Doug Peterson. I think that this offense has looked a lot better than anybody expected them to. I do think they have weapons, and I do think they have the capability of beating this team. It's obvious, as you saw, it's not on my list this week. I will say this, and I said this yesterday on the show. I have money on the Jaguars to win that game, but I'm not making it an official play. So I really like them in teasers, because you can get the Jaguars at plus 12.5, plus 13.5 if you match it up with some of these other games. I could do a teaser with the Jets, Rams, Jaguars, and just kind of stretch that out, and you can get the Jaguars 14. You get the Jets at plus 10. You can get the Rams at about plus 9 or about 8 or 9. That's a pretty good parlay right there, and you can get plus money on that. But with that being said, for those of you listening for just the sports part of the show, we appreciate you. For those of you who stick around for the movie corner, let's go ahead and dive in. This weekend, we had Matthew Fox's favorite movie of 2022 released, and that was Blonde. He was just so excited about this movie, and he's so happy to talk about it on the show today. But for anybody listening to the show, don't watch Blonde. Please don't. It's terrible. It's awful. It's god-awful. I hated it. It's just an abysmal piece of film. It's out on Netflix right now if you really want to sit for, 3 hours of just torture porn. Fox?
It was so bad. Creatively, Andrew Dominic's interviews have been really bad, and he's the one that made the assassination of Jesse James, right?
Yeah.
I sort of like that movie, although I would cop to it being incredibly weird and artsy. I think they were trying to go for weird and artsy, but it's too long, it's too graphic. I'd be surprised if they don't get sued by some of the real life people for some of the depictions they did. If Marilyn Monroe family has an estate, they should too. Ana de Armas deserves better. So does Marilyn Monroe. Ana de Armas now has been in 2 high-profile hideous films this year, Blonde and Deep Water, which was deeply unsatisfying on every level. And the worst thing for Netflix is this is a distant second in releases they've even had midweek this week, because Rob Zombie's The Munsters was a delight.
I can't believe that. Of all people in the world that I thought would say something like that.
I can't believe that either. I'm not a Rob Zombie filmmaker fan. Sherry Moon Zombie was incredible.
I love that. I'm excited about it now.
It was fun. It was light. It was campy. I thought he was going to turn it into a horror movie. I was terrified. 20 minutes in, I was like, oh, I see what we're doing here. I can pick up what we're putting down. I enjoyed the hell out of that movie.
That's crazy. I'm hoping to catch it this weekend because there's a laundry list of movies out this weekend. Starting at, obviously we mentioned Blonde, we mentioned The Munsters. You have Hocus Pocus 2 dropping on Disney Plus, which I thought was incredible. I really thought it was fun. Did you watch it yet?
No, but on Saturday, Eric and I are going to do live at the movies. We're going to do Smile, Hocus Pocus, The Munsters, and each of us are going to look at a spooky movie from the past we like. So I'll be watching Hocus Pocus and Smile both tomorrow.
I'm hoping to catch Smile. I don't know if I'm going to be able to yet or not. That's one that I've heard really good things about. I've heard mixed things about it, but good things at the same time. Other things dropping this weekend. You have My Best Friend's Exorcism on Amazon Prime dropping tomorrow. The Greatest Beer Run Ever is hitting Apple TV Plus, which I actually liked. It's not great. It's not anything other than just fine. I liked Efron in it. I thought he's a lot of fun. I like Efron. I think that he's a decent actor that just doesn't get enough credit because of what he looks like. You know what I mean? He's just a good looking guy. And I mean, he is a good looking guy. But, another thing that I don't want to go under the radar is On the Come Up. I really like that one on Paramount Plus. I had a good time with that one. I know it came out last weekend, but I just want to highlight it again because it's a whole lot of fun. Let's see here. Is that everything I think that's coming out this weekend? I'm pretty positive it is. Let's see. Nothing else came out in theaters this weekend, right? Well, I think a few things did. Let's see here. No, Bros. Bros comes out. I really like Bros. I like Bros a lot. I thought that was a lot of fun. It's funny. It won't be for everyone, and that's perfectly fine. Also saw Amsterdam, but I'm going to leave my comments about that to myself right now. But overall, yeah, it's a jam-packed weekend. Lots of content across all streaming platforms, plus, in theaters as well. There's some movies that are kind of still hanging out that are still in theaters that I think we both recommend. Obviously, leading off with The Woman King. Don't Worry, Darling, which was a movie. I want to see. I still haven't seen See How They Run, which I kind of want to see because it looks like a cheeky good time. But I'll probably wait for Blu-ray or DVD or whatever. And then Barbarian's still out there, which we'll probably see less theaters just based on Smiley being released. But lots of stuff out there. Please go to the movies. Support movies. Please support movies. Please support movies. Please support movies. What you got? Anything? You got anything on TV that started this week that you liked?
Fall season has begun on network television, and there's a reason network viewership is declining.
What am I watching right now? Oh, House of Dragons. I didn't love this week's episode. I hated it, actually.
That time jump. As I called it, it was House of the Midwife this week. A fusion.
I love Olivia Cook.
Midwife. I like her as an actress, but they actually took. Not only did they change actresses, they took those two characters and, in my opinion, in episode 6, made them insufferable.
They made Damien emo too, which is weird.
That was a weird, insufferable timeline. There were too many births. There were too many people burning to death. There were Also, Aegon got the worst character introduction, I think, the show's history. I was just like, it was a complete non sequitur to anything. I have questions, but at the same time, I don't want any answers.
It shows I like it. I'm really liking it, but I'm not really understanding what we're trying to do with this time jump, especially if you knew you were going to get multiple seasons out of this show. I don't feel like the time jump was really necessary. You could have finished out this season, got what we needed out of these characters, and then moved on with our lives. But I'm kind of lost for words with it, but I'm running with it just because I'm hooked. It's one of the only shows I've ever watched weekly. I've watched bits and pieces, and I mean by bits and pieces, I mean bits and pieces. My wife's been watching it, but the Jeffrey Dahmer show has been something. Evan Peters is incredible, but all of the whatever is coming out of that out of that series is weird. But
I thought.
It's weird. I don't even know. I don't even know anymore. With that being said, we thank you guys for listening to the show this week. Make sure to follow Matthew Fox on Twitter at Nighthawk7734. Follow myself at Ricky Valero _ Head over to the Music City Drive and check out all the latest articles, reviews, and content for the NFL season. It's been a fun one so far, and we'll talk to you guys next week.